Because this is my first time to meet with all of you, and I'm learning a little bit about your work, you're possibly learning about our work for the first time. I've only got, for the sake of time, 8 slides. So I think I'm going to just slip through those kind of quickly and then just stop, and then we can chat about anything that's come to mind. So if you think you're going to get PowerPointed to death, you will not today, I promise. It's really short. So hoping mostly this can be our get acquainted time. You can tell me about your work, tell me about things that you may be needing some help with, or give me some ideas. I say this is just kind of my first stab at ways that the centers might be helpful in your work. The regional rural development centers, there are 4 of these. They are, so the United States is divided into 4 regions by USDA. These 4 regions have approximately 13 states in each one, give or take 1 or 2. And so I was going to see how many of you actually know where your regional rural development center is in the area in which you live. So I can't see your hand raises, but
go ahead and type in chat. Type in chat if you know about that in your region. There's lots of space in chat, so just go right ahead.
All right. You'll have to watch that for me, Luann, since I can't see it.
Okay, so we've got more no's than yeses.
Okay. All right, well, I would love to show, so I'm going to have to just, if we don't get this up where you can see it, I'll send my PowerPoint through you, Luann, because it does have the map on it and shows where the regions are. But I will do my best to describe them somewhat. Maybe we'll get somewhere there.
Hey, actually, if you can multitask and send me those slides in email while you're talking, I can probably put them up and share my screen.
That's a good idea.
We're going to MacGyver this session the best we can.
We're going to make it work. I love it.
That's right. Mark says there's one here in Raleigh, but he's not sure it's regional. Could there be local?
That is not one of the 4.
That's not one of the 4. Okay.
Good try, though. There's a lot of things that have regional in the name, and so there is some confusion about that, and so I think that's important that we figure out what we're talking about. So the regional rural development centers are divided into 4 regions. We have the Western region, which basically is exactly what you might expect on a map. It takes the 13 westernmost states, including Hawaii and Alaska, and it is in Utah, and it's headed by Don Albrecht as the director of that center. The Southern Center has the 13 southeast states, and that's the center where we are, and we are housed at Mississippi State University. So each one of these centers is housed at one of the land grants, kind of central to the region. The North Central sits above us, and then the Northeast is the 13 Northeast states. So when you see the map, you'll see kind of how that falls out. Our mission and our task in these centers is to work with the research and extension land grant universities within our region, looking at how we can take the strength of research and the strength of extension within the land grant system to address critical contemporary rural development issues that impact the well-being of our communities. We're regional because, as you can imagine, and you probably know this well, regions, when you think about those 4 regions, the kinds of issues are unique to those areas, and some things that we deal with in the South are unique to the South. Some of the things that the West is dealing with are very unique to the West. So it gives us an opportunity to address those regional issues, but then also because the 4 of us are linked together and we're funded through NIFA, the National Institute of Food and Agriculture, because we're linked together through NIFA and linked together as sister organizations, we also have the opportunity to, okay, we're getting something up there, to have a national opportunity to link together. Okay, so the Southern Rural Development Center, as I mentioned, we have a set of priorities here that matches our region and what's important and what's working for us. So these are the current priorities, and that is fostering civic-minded communities, and that's looking at how people connect to the issues and the concerns that are important to them, building economically vibrant communities, just looking at anything from the single level, such as building entrepreneurs, helping small businesses, those kinds of things, to really thinking on the community or even multi-county regional area of how can we work together to improve the economy of our region. So this can go to a lot of things, innovations, it can go to business, it can go to really thinking about planning and strategic planning and how things work together on the community level. And then the third one is strengthening capacity of communities. And this is looking at how do we really look at some of the challenges that are unique. And in this case, in the South, we have the highest poverty level of any of the 4 regions. And so that's an ongoing concern. We're forever looking at ways to help alleviate poverty. We also deal with a lot of natural disasters. Almost all of our states are coastal states. So hurricanes are not a matter of are they going to hit us this year? It's where are they going to hit us? So we gear for those things, and those are some of the unique concerns to the South. So I've set those priorities in there just as kind of an overview, but I want to tell you about a few things that I think might have a direct connection to you, and then you can give me some feedback on whether or not these are the right things, or if there's some other things that you'd like to hear about or know more about as we get together in March. So you can go to the next slide if you would. I want to tell you a little bit about community engagement, because this is one of the things that Chris talked to me about whenever we were first visiting about coming and being with you, that there was an element of community engagement that some of the projects were seeking. So what does this mean? Why is it important? So this is really thinking about why, whatever the issue is that you're facing, you're working on, why does it matter, and who needs to be part of that decision-making process? One of the things that we've learned across the South, and this is the reason this is one of our priorities, is that many people feel like they are disconnected from the things that matter to them in the community, that decisions are made by somebody else somewhere else and they have little or no impact on that decision-making process. So this is an effort to think about ways that we can include the communities, we can bring people in and help them be not only shape the direction that the issue will be addressed, but also take a hands-on approach and be a part of that. It's important because the more people have that buy-in to things that matter to them in their own communities, the more they're willing to pitch in and help, and the more satisfaction that happens in the long run. We've seen a lot of money poured into some areas from outside with people coming in and looking and seeking for solutions from the outside. But without that place-based approach of what matters to the people that live in that community and that will be sustaining in that community, you may go the wrong direction. So thinking about how to choose an approach that works best is one of the things that we do. There's not a one-size-fits-all, but there's some really unique ways that you think about what's the best way to get people involved, how do I think about it, how do I approach this, and then how do I help facilitate and help it to make it happen. So closely related to that is the next slide, and that is identifying and recruiting partners. But these are the people that are going to be a little more closely tied to what you're doing. So if you're thinking, I've got this great idea, I've got this project, this innovation, I know where I want to go, but I really got some folks I need to have with me that can help me with this and that can stand alongside me, we can join hands to make this happen. So on this part, what's important is thinking about who I need to recruit. Is that somebody internal to Extension or within the land-grant university system, or is that somebody from outside the land-grant system that I need to think about and that I need to be bringing in as a partner? And so if you think about those people and you kind of got those people in your mind, or maybe need a little help thinking about who those people are, but once you get that, then how do I make the ask? A lot of us get a lot of asks for a lot of things, and some of them you turn down, some of them you don't. But there are some ways that you can frame an ask in a way that is raising the possibility that you've got those really key players joining you. And so that's something that's really important that we've done quite a bit of work on here. And then, of course, how do I maintain that partnership? All of you can probably think of at least 5 organizations that you've been members of in the past that you no longer are participating in. Am I right? At least 5? Think about it. So those are the things that there's some things that you stay a part of because they matter to you, and then there's some reasons, some things that you drop off. So how do you maintain those partnerships at work? And that's something that we can think about with you. All right, look into the next slide. There's always that opportunity to seek funding. And I almost didn't even put the word funding up here because I think in some ways that's part of the problem is we think everything has to be funding. We think it's all got to be dollars. It's all got to be grants. I got to go get the next grant. But it's really about finding the resources you need, and that might not come in the way of dollars. So that's one of the things that you think about at the beginning of this. And I love this lovely little picture here because this, obviously it's partly angled, but this poor little dog looks like that tail is wagging him. And it's real easy if you get in the mindset of I got to go chase the grant dollars to make my project happen, that you start chasing that and that becomes more pressing than really getting the work of your innovation done. So we want to talk about ways that you can find the resources you need, find them appropriately, find good fits, but not let that be what drives what you're doing, but that you really can articulate that need and find those resources that make the most sense. And sometimes they're closer than you think. Sometimes they're within. There's a great example I had of just a project that happened just in the past year here locally. I had a group that came in and they were interested in doing a project. And it was a really cool, innovative kind of arts tourism project. And their first question was, where do I get grant dollars? And I said, well, I don't know. I mean, what do you need to do and what do you need? And once they put down really what resources they needed and who in the community were those partners that might care about this, they were able to fund internally without ever raising a dollar, just by going to the right partners and having that resource list and putting that ask together in the right way. Never raised the first grant dollar, but they've got the project done, and it's pretty exciting. It's expanding this year. So it's not always about the grant, but it is about thinking very carefully about what it is you need and what's the right way to go after it. All right, let's look at the next slide. And then the next one, this is really kind of my last big idea before we start discussion, is what do you do once you get this innovation really cleaned up and ready, and you got it and you are ready to tell it to the world? How can the RDCs help with that? This is one of the strengths, I think, of the centers, is that we have the opportunity to not only reach within our networks in each region, like my colleagues in the South, we've got great connections with them across extension and research, but also by linking and networking among the 4 centers, we can pretty quickly take a great idea, a promising practice, and spread it really quickly nationwide. Some of the easy ways that we do that are through webinars. I know here in the South, we do a monthly webinar about something cool that's going on in community development. So we'd love for y'all to come join us on those. We also have got, and the other regions do those also, but there's also publications that we do on as needed basis. We do a monthly newsletter. Some of the other regions do too, or we do special publications. The Western Center does a quarterly publication that's really nice and do a great job. But we also have workshops that we set up from time to time, and as we see great connections with what you're doing, that may be an opportunity to invite you to come be a part of a workshop or to sponsor you to go to something or help us with something that we feel like is going to be of use to the regions. And then the collaboratives. This is, again, one of this ties back to the mission of the centers. Our task, my job every day, is to think within the Southern region about the issues and the innovations and the things that are going on, and think about how I can help build capacity by connecting people across state lines, whether that's extension or research or a mix of that. How do we bring the right people together? How do we help promote working together so that we're not reinventing everything all over again? You guys are on the cutting edge of some cool things, some great innovations. And so having this opportunity to share and tell your story and help you as you take it to that next level will certainly be an area that the center's excited about helping you with. So I told you I only had a few slides. And so keeping with that, this is it. And because this is our first time to meet together, I just kind of wanted to chat and tell you a little bit about the center, a little bit about how we work collectively, and then just kind of get your reactions about if there's anything here that you see that's particularly interesting, or if you're facing a particular challenge, whether I mentioned it or not, I'd love to kind of hear about those things that you're struggling with, and that will help me be better prepared to bring whatever we can as resources to the center into the discussion when we meet again in San Antonio. So I'm going to stop and see what you have in your mind. So I see one question I will respond to right quickly while we're doing that, and that are there geographic restrictions in where RDCs can operate, such as urban? Our initial charge is to work in rural, thus our name, regional rural development centers, but it's really hard to think about rural without also knowing that there's a strong connection to urban. Neither one can exist without the other one, so it's important that we have both. And so where there's those linkages and those ways that we can work with urban, there's no limits to what we can do there. So really no is the short answer. We do look for those ways that whatever we're doing can help serve and strengthen rural areas also. Good question.
Yes, I have a question. Can we connect the core members from other regions to someone, a point person at their development center? Can you facilitate that for them? If we give you a geographic breakdown maybe of the core members, could we maybe provide them with that information? Maybe you want to do that at the conference, or we could.
Yeah, definitely can do that. I can bring some materials with me that everybody can have those in their hands. But also, just for those of you that have joined now, if you go to rrdc.info, it's nice and short, easy to remember. You'll see the map, you'll see the regions, and if you click on those regions, it'll take you to each of the centers and see who the contact people are. But yeah, I'd be glad to share that. But it also, by going to their websites, you can see some things that are happening in their regions too, which might interest you specifically, those of you that live in other regions. Are any of you in the South? If you raise your hand, at least I can see that. I gave 1, 2. All right, cool.
Some people aren't on camera. It's because they're shy about eating lunch on camera, I think.
I understand. That's why I've been in Zoom meetings and hadn't tested my camera before. So. All right, so there's a question here. Can you tell us how RDC goals mesh with those of NIFA? Working on local foods. Okay, great. Yeah. Oh, Kentucky, good. One of the things that we do, and I think this may not be the best example, but people kind of get that, there's a lot of stuff happening in DC. I don't know if y'all saw some raised eyebrows, some nods. There's a lot of stuff going on. It's hard to keep a handle on what's there, what are the opportunities, how do we connect to those things? It just almost seems bigger than life sometimes. And then there's so much great work going on. If you think on extension down, even on the county level, there's great work, there's great opportunities, but there's also great challenges, and there's a lot there, and there's a lot going on. One of the things and the reasons that the RDCs were created, and we were created by a public law back in 1972, if you care about the history of that, is because there was this need to kind of figure out an in-between, how do we connect these two? We don't, it's not practical for all of the federal agencies to be speaking all the way to all the county agents. That'll never happen, not in this world at least. Even with all of our great technology, we're just not quite there. So the centers were created to say, okay, what if we created these 4 kind of hub places that could help bridge and connect those pieces? So, for instance, one of the ways that we do that is we have a national program leader in NIFA, Brent Elrod. If any of you know Brent, he is our direct liaison with NIFA, and so he's forever giving us those information. We share that, and we're pushing that out and sharing that within our respective regions. Also, we are making a point to be in DC at least once a quarter, and one of the things that Brent does with us is he sets up back-to-back meetings with different federal agencies that are looking at some of the issues that we're identifying in our regions. So this local foods is a great example. We are working right now in the South. So those of you, any of you are in the South and you're working on foods, we need to chat. We're working right now on this across the South because we had started having a lot of these calls that came from county and state level from within our region to us saying, okay, local foods movement, it's big, it's growing. We need some help kind of getting our arms around this on research and extension. How do we do this? And then the federal agencies, of course, there's a lot of interest growing there. USDA Rural Development, NIFA, Ag Marketing Services, a number of those agencies are just right on the edge of this and really very interested in giving both technical support, and also there's a lot of funding out there for this. So those calls came kind of from both ends to our office here in the Southern Rural Development Center. And so we set up last August a meeting in the DC area where we invited all of our Southern folks to come join us. And then we invited the DC folks. And so we had an initial meeting. We have another meeting, our second meeting planned for May 9-10. And we just got an AFRI seed grant to help us do this work, to really think about this regionally. So if that just sparked an interest in any of your minds and hearts, please drop me an email or chat or something, and we'll make sure you get the details about that. Right now we're looking for the ways that we can connect. So that's just one example. Northeast is doing the exact same thing, only they are about 2 years ahead of us. They have been in the local foods movement for several years now. And so we're learning from them. That's been great that we've been able to connect with Stefan Getz as the director of the Northeast Center, so that we're not having to start from scratch, but we're going to Stefan, and Stefan's telling us about what they did and kind of how they pulled things together. And so we're stepping along behind, and we're doing something similar in the South. So that's just one great example. We are looking for those ways where those national interests and the national priorities can link up with those things that are bubbling up as great interests that are coming from county and state levels as people are trying to really serve and work with rural areas. All right, I see one from Jill.
I guess I'll read it out loud because actually the
Oh, okay.
can catch this. One of my biggest challenges is finding ways that people who participate in multi-state groups and share resources can learn about how, when their participation or resource was utilized by others or helpful. Are there any ideas on how to create those feedback loops?
No, and that's not too specific. That's a huge challenge, and it's something that we struggle with sometimes, because we sometimes put our materials up and then we come back later and go, oh, is somebody using that? It depends on how you put it up. There are some ways, just using the technology that's available, Google Analytics on a website, how often people are pinging your resources. That's a simple count, relatively simple count. And so that's one of the things I know that we've done whenever we've shared resources. You can look at some other things, like you can actually have, and Gershell do these, and so I've become very sensitive. I have become the answerer of all surveys. And so if y'all aren't there yet, you might want to think about it, because there's times that we do that at the very end of a resource. Maybe we'll put a link and say, if you've used this or if you found this valuable, please just do us a quick ping, and it's maybe 2 questions or 3 questions, but something super simple. So you can create some of those things. Of course, there's some of the ways that you can go in and do searches to see how many times things have been cited, but that's probably not quite on the same level that you're talking about, I'm guessing. So it kind of depends on what it is you're using, but if you've got something that's an online resource, there are some online ways of measuring how people are grabbing things.
That doesn't really though get at, they might be accessing it, but what you really want to know is how they used it and capturing those stories. That's the trick, isn't it? So yeah, without having people need to create an account to access your resources and then you can track them that way. I'm not really sure eXtension has a good answer to that either, but it's a great question.
So, and this is another area that all 4 of the centers, we're actually working nationally and in our regions, and that's looking at impact indicators that we can gather across the region. I probably should have dropped that slide in, because there's probably some of those indicators that y'all would look at and go, oh, that matches up with some of my work. So I can send that and share that. But looking at things like businesses created or jobs created and retained, or the amount of money leveraged in a community because of something, the number of partnerships that have come together, the number of planning documents. There's all kinds of ways that you want to know those stories, what happened. It's not, I did great stuff and I know it's great, but I got it out there and I put it out there for the world, and how do I know the wonderful things that the world has done with this? Is there an easy answer to that? I think if there was an easy answer to that, we'd all be doing it already. So honestly, it's not. But by being intentional, there are some things that you can do. And so that's part of what this regional and national group is looking at, is what are the ways we can come around this and give at least some best practices. So there are some really cool tools that we're playing with right now. And if any of you have done ripple mapping, but if you can find those communities and identify places that have tried your innovations or tried your materials, there's a really kind of neat thing that you can do in a couple hours if you can get a group to say, hey, you know, I know that you've used the materials, glad you've used it. Do you think you could get a group together for a couple hours and let us just chat a little bit about it? And so there's a really neat, very interactive, someone's Googling it now. We're working on a series of research articles on this whole process that we've done for one initiative in the South. And so I look forward to sharing that. Community Development Society is going to be publishing that journal. It's really cool. If you go on the Journal of Extension and just type in ripple mapping, you'll find 3 or 4 very basic kind of what's it all about articles. That's really great. I would encourage you, regardless of what you do, and this is one of my big things, is have some kind of evaluation document. Have something. It can be simple. You can do a Likert scale. You know, this helped me, this didn't. But I always like to have the 2 questions I almost always put on an evaluation is, what did you like the most about this, and what would make it even better? Most of the time, if you don't have, I mean, you can have Likert scale, but if you only have those 2 questions, most of the time people will answer those 2 questions. And then to come back later, if you have that opportunity to come back and do that really hard part, that long-term evaluation, and find out the so what happened. Let's say ripple mapping is one tool, but it really takes that time and just sometimes even planning on your calendar. Do y'all ever do this? No, you don't really have to raise your hands because it's true confession time. Do you block time on your calendar for you to do the things that you need to do? Or do you only put things on your calendar, meetings and things that other people want you to do? I learned from someone a long time ago that putting that time on my calendars, for me, that's like, it looks like an appointment. So somebody else is looking at my calendar, and we do shared calendars. They go, oh, Rachel's got this appointment. Instead, it's really Rachel's got an appointment with herself because it's things I need to do. It's a great suggestion that I got from a seasoned person when I was new to Extension. So that may be one of those things that we just have to know. I need every 6 months, or I need every, once a year, whatever that time frame is, to go do 5 calls to people that I know have used this material and do a follow-up. So, and I'm using material as an example. That may not be exactly the kind of framework you're talking about, but it does require being intentional. So not easy, but absolutely essential. The work that we're doing with the CRD indicators, the community resource development indicators, when we go to those DC meetings now, I'm walking in, I'll grab one. It happens to be on my desk. Because I just got back from DC. I'm walking in with this nice 1 page that says, here are the numbers. And then also has, and it's got, this is 4 pages, but you can see some examples. It's got each state and a vignette. So for our 13 states, we've got a little story that's less than 75 words. That's the max. It says, here's one cool thing that happened during this time period. Here are the numbers. And that's getting tremendous traction. When people are busy, especially you're thinking about your legislators and those people that like to give you money, when they're busy, but you want to get something in front of them, the shorter the better. So taking the time to do even those little bitty short stories is valuable. Blogging is good. That's a great way to get a short story out. And then if someone's following your blog, you've got a little bit out there, but you got to have the stories in order to tell the stories. So that's the challenge. All right, I see some things popping in here, some articles, good.
So there's that. Anybody have another question on a different topic? How many people in this call are working in food systems?
Oh, yay, good.
I guess we can't see the hand raises in those people.
Yeah, the ones at the bottom, I just have to guess.
Yeah, right.
I think 5 hands raised if I caught them all.
I think one of the things we're going to be looking to do at the conference is to group up people with similar perspectives or focus areas they're working on within food systems, because there will be some commonalities across geography around those kinds of things. We haven't managed to get that done yet, but I'm thinking, Rachel, that would be helpful. So maybe, you know, our format at the Design-a-thon will be for core members to select from our 30-something key informants who are there and initiate a conversation themselves. But what we might have time for too is for you to prepare some sort of insights in these, I call them the buckets that the projects fall into based on your experience with working with communities at your center. For example, food hubs or farmers markets or farm to school, that sort of thing. Because you may be able to talk with more people that way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that sounds great. I'm just jotting down too some of the things we're talking about, so I'll make sure I can bring things with me that we've done. But I also look forward to hearing about your innovations, because this foods world is really about just bringing together the people, the experts like you that are doing the work, and just thinking about how can we just do this so that all 13 of the South states, for instance, are not recreating everything within their own state borders, or sometimes even within county borders. How can we really learn from each other and grow a system? So I'm looking forward to hearing about your innovations. So some of the things I've jotted down so far, I can bring some ideas about ripple mapping so you get a little more firsthand of what that looks like. You can bring some things that kind of show where we are on the food systems. We did this really very interesting kind of a mind map around the whole entire food system from farmer to consumer and everything in between and what it looks like. It's messy, but it's fun. And so I'd love to share that with you a little bit. I can bring some of the CRD indicators and kind of how we're looking at that and how we're trying to think about that. We've got some definitions on those now and a little bit of explanation of how we're going to consistently measure those across the region. So those are a few ideas. Yeah, so I'll bring the report of the CRD report. The North Central has done the same thing. The West and the Northeast are working on gearing up to do regional indicators. I think they are not quite to the point of having their first report, but North Central does have a similar report. And so I can bring examples of both ours and the North Central's. Other ideas?
Yeah, the core, we have evaluation key informants for the core, but anything that you have on evaluation specifically for food systems work would be great.
Okay, we have got a regional team that's working on just that one thing. So they're working on, are y'all familiar with SARAs, or they've got different titles depending on what region you're in? So a SARA is a Southern Extension Research activity. Yours are going to be the Westerns or the Northern, North Centrals or the Northeast Research and Extension activities. So these are formalized groups that go through your extension and research administrators at the land grants in your region, and they formally kind of give their blessing to these groups forming around these topics. As they do that, these groups have to come up with some objectives that are research and extension collaborative efforts. So this foods group in the South is getting ready to submit its application to be a formal SARA. But one of the objectives in that group is to look at how do we do a better job of measuring our impact on local food systems and regional food systems, and then how do we tell our story related to that. So there's one group they've actually been working, their work predates our effort to bring all this together. So they're pretty far down the road in getting some of their thinking together. Other thoughts or questions? Other things that you're struggling with that we haven't talked about, maybe that would just spark some ideas for things that I could share if there's something that we have or something I can get from one of the other regions?
Actually, Rachel was looking to hear a little bit from some of you about those kinds of issues you're facing, or a little bit about your project to help orient her to working with the core, particularly at the conference. Measurements of success in local food. How about, does somebody have a particularly quirky thing that they're wrestling with that might not be so common to everybody else? I think there's a variety of kinds of challenges within the core, as well as some commonalities. Don't forget, it's okay to speak.
I taught first grade once. I could start calling on people.
Call on those kids in the back row, right?
You know how the teacher always calls on the one who looks like they're paying least attention as people turn their cameras off. Yeah, I see that's a good approach.
All right. Well, there's no reason to hang around longer if we don't have anything to bring up. But I think I'll be sharing that link to the post, the blog post about the Design-a-thon later. So what you'll, and I alluded to this before, what you're going to need to do at the Design-a-thon is we brought together, I think we have 33 key informants that will be there. Rachel will be one of them. And actually her table, most of the conversation tables have maybe 3 experts grouped together. I think Rachel might be a solo there. I'm not sure, a lone wolf at her table. So it might be difficult for you to have a conversation one-on-one with her. There might be a line. I'm thinking so. So there's that one strategy of putting like projects together, and maybe having an opportunity for you to talk to all of them at once, or you could do that ahead of time too. So I'd encourage you, if you haven't thought of something she could help you with to bring up right now, then in email prior to the conference, that'd be a good way to connect with Rachel. At least tip her off to what you're interested in, and then maybe she can prepare something to share with you at the conference. Or you could work on it one-on-one. There's always Slack too. I could bring Rachel into Slack, but you know, we've only got a week and a half till the conference, so maybe email is best. So let's do that. And if that way, maybe you can grease the wheels so that your time with her will be more productive face-to-face. Does that make sense?
And I would love that too, because I really would like to. I'm excited. I'm really interested to learn about all the projects and what's going on. So I'd love to get even just a quick email from you. I put my email back in the box, just saying, hey, this is your name, and this is kind of what I'm working on, and this is something I'm struggling with. Just 3 lines. Just give me a starting point, and that would give me a chance to learn a little bit about you. If you've got website links or anything that would connect me, I'd love to have a chance to look at those.
I won't send you the giant file of all their applications because you might run away. If I send you
Well, I probably wouldn't have a chance to read those in just a little over a week, but I would love to learn as much as I can before I get there.
Okay. Great. Victor says, my challenge is not so much connecting with communities as much as getting Extension and the university to engage with those communities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's, there's some unique challenges that we face when we're working with people on a university campus. They all have their challenges and things that are driving what they do. And then, whether you're county or extension, state level, then, you've got things that you're trying to do and get done in a community. So one of those things, and I'm going to leave you with this teaser, goes back to one of those slides that said, how do you frame that ask? How do you frame that ask to get a yes? And so I'm going to leave you with that teaser. There's a way to do that. Not a perfect answer that works every time, but it's a way that'll help you think about how you want to approach that person that you need and how you might get to a yes.
That sounds good. Okay, great. Well, we're looking forward to seeing Rachel and all of you in San Antonio.
I'm really excited about this. So I'm looking forward to meeting you all face to face and seeing what all you're doing.